I'm Zulema Ramos, and I'm an undergraduate here at UT, and I'm here to show you all how powerful we are as consumers and what we can do to help this planet. This is an EPA map showing current Superfund sites in the U.S., but I'll come back to that later. Let's focus on us for a moment, right here in Tampa. And on a list of the top 9 cities on Earth most vulnerable to the negative effects of accelerated climate change, where do you think Tampa is on this list? Tampa is number 7. But let's not forget that that doesn't affect everyone equally. Let's talk about climate justice. Climate justice is distinct, and its focus on those abroad in places like Honduras, the Philippines, Haiti, and Bangladesh, whose residents deal with things like landslides, increased storms, floods, among other awful things. But it doesn't forget those here in the U.S. who have the least access to safety and health care. Climate justice focuses on those who experience the worst effects of accelerated climate change, but they've contributed to it the least. Climate justice, its core principles are centered in, core facets are centered in the Jemez principles, of which there are 6. Climate advocates like myself focus on these when organizing campaigns with the Tampa Bay Climate Justice Committee. I also center these principles when organizing on campus in organizations like the Environmental Protection Coalition and Spartans Seeking Justice. Number 1, inclusion of all being defended in a movement is necessary. Number 2, consider those first who are actually affected by a social issue and form leadership from within while welcoming new supporters in this continuous struggle. Number 3, let those who are the most affected speak for themselves and tell us how they want to see their visions fulfilled. Number 4, understand that as organizations and social justice movements, how we can work together with others to accomplish our goals. Number 5, foster just relationships amongst ourselves so that we are functioning in a way that equally benefits everyone. Number 6, continuously be committed to progression as organizations and as individual activists in our endeavor for justice, peace, and an equitable world. Though all of these are extremely important, let's take a look at number 4, the one about the interconnected nature of all social justice movements. Now, before we begin, I think it important to deconstruct certain narratives about living a life of kindness. Some people think that we're hippies, radicals, and often just plain classist. And mind you, there are always going to be examples of every stereotype. But unlike a plant-based lifestyle, veganism is a true social justice stance against the mistreatment and killing of all species. They are all equally seen as deserving of life. And on top of which, it costs about $4 a day to live a plant-based lifestyle, while it costs about $10 a day to live a meat-based lifestyle. And on top of which, according to a journal on human and clinical nutrition called the Annals of Nutrition and Metabolism, vegans have lower rates of obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and significantly lower cancer risk. The U.S. needlessly spends $414 billion on external animal welfare, environmental, and healthcare costs, according to author of Metanomics in California, attorney David Robinson Simon. Now that we've discussed the internal effects of veganism, and I've shown you how we can live healthy and be vegan, let's talk about the external effects, the environment. Animal agriculture, one of the many issues included in is 45% of Earth's global land, of all Earth's land, and 20 to 33% of all Earth's fresh water. According to the World Bank, just to feed these animals, 91% of Amazon deforestation was for crops. On top of which, the manure of these non-human animals are stored in these open-air lagoons. The manure is applied to the land as fertilizer in quantities that the soil is not able to incorporate it. It's literally sprayed everywhere, untreated. Even the USDA admits this. And this creates things called Superfund sites in low-income communities. Superfund sites are any land in the United States contaminated by hazardous waste and identified by the EPA as a tangible threat to human health and the environment. Now, you might be wondering at this point, how exactly do these Superfund sites work? What do we do with them? Well, once they are documented, they are put on the EPA's national priority list, where they can be labeled as proposed, withdrawn, final, or deleted. If proposed, that means it's possible that they will be cleaned up. Withdrawn, they're not even labeled a threat to human health, which is why they were identified in the first place. Final means an HRS screening system has been used to evaluate the situation. Public comments have been solicited, and it's been labeled a tangible threat to human health and the environment. Now, these Superfund sites are usually thanks to community surveys done since 1987 by organizations like the United Church of Christ. We know that they are usually put in communities that are low income and of color. So, thus far we know animal agricultural companies choose to pollute the environment, harm public health, and charge us more for it. And because they're in these low-income communities, their residents often are forced to work in these same factory farms that exploit them. Now, you might be wondering, according to the Huffington Post, workers in the meat industry suffer repetitive motion injury rates 30 times the national average and often defecate in their pants to avoid slowing down. Counties with slaughterhouses have 4 times the national average of violent arrest, with significantly higher rates of alcoholism, domestic abuse, child abuse, and suicide. And this just doesn't seem fair. Go back one. We have a sea of evidence thanks to organizations like the University of Colorado, the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, the Georgia Journal of Poverty and Law, among others. Vegans and climate justice advocates can and should work together to combat all of these issues. We can work together to find solutions that we all can agree on. Think about how much of that $414 billion could be reallocated for things like green energy, free healthcare, and healthy plant-based food. In Germany, which has 1/8 of our domestic economy, they've created over 300,000 new jobs in solar, which on average workers make about $26 per hour, and the field is actually ethnically diverse, which means that we could employ these workers in solar plants rather than factory farms. Rather than targeting marginalized communities who are already suffering, we can invest in green jobs that empower them. Does anyone remember Irma? By a show of hands. I know I do. Well, this is a house destroyed right here in Florida. This is what happens when we don't pay attention to accelerated climate change. It gets closer and closer until we do. Now, it doesn't have to be this way, but what can we do? We can go and march in Washington, and we can go vegan. Going forward in this battle for the planet, let us model our actions around ideals that benefit us all and come together to create a more equitable world.